Feuchamaich, ye Olde Scot the Celtic podcast. Kimraha Huladunya, how is everyone? On today's show in Feuchamaich, Beagan, Gaelic, that's Let's Try Little Gaelic. The second video in the series, Frustrated with Gaelic. In Celtic history, the wolf, the Quarrelsome. In everyday Celtic ways, the Stoor worm. We'll hear music from Julie Fallis, Rachel Newton, Alison Helzer, Maeve McKinnon, and Braybock. And as always, it's a wee bit of Irish trivia to start us off. What was Joseph Plunkett's middle name? You know, the Irish nationalist, Republican poet, journalist, revolutionary, and leader of the 1916 Easter Rising. All right. Check out the Ye Olde Scot Facebook group where you can be a part of the Celtic culture, and keep an eye out for all the different videos our YouTube channel and Facebook group have to offer. Feuchamaich, let's kick this thing off.
Smiorach le clown doel mi Smiorach me shedur lat fippel Groepe ganam dusel katel Ganjarach gehitch na satje Trumut ma vran harle maikne Alle vak holjo Alle vak horo Alle vak holjo Smiorach le clown el mi Smiorach me shed mo wach benje Gauwer gereje spelen sölje Ik mi stolt a god na kulje Bi mi bewer telt de sille Alle vak holo Alle vak horo Alle vak holo Smiorach le clown doel mi Ma volle stachie na hit fi Kemmer is nak mollig misje Chid men kuri, chid men krier An chid vieget ieli vissal Alle vak holo Alle vak horo Alle vak holo Smiorach le clown doel mi Chid nach gul I kosh na mara An chid gul och gevachana An chid lug och bod nach pianoch Chid an narain vanyach mialoch Alle vak holo Alle vak horo Alle vak holo Smiorach le clown doel mi
Scottish Gaelic is native to the Gaels of Scotland. Scottish Gaelic developed out of the Old Irish, and learning this beautiful language can be a direct link to your Gaelic ancestors. Follow along in Feuchamaich Beagan Gaelic, and like I said, let's try a little Gaelic. Frustrated with Gaelic? An easy way to keep the Scottish Gaelic language alive is to keep it in your daily vocabulary. Little bits here and there to let those around you know how important it is to you. This is especially important if you have small children. They will have the benefits of learning another language and share a common link with you and your heritage. Quarrelsome. How are you? Hamigama Tapalev. I am good, thank you. Kimra How are you yourself? Gleva. Very good. Kimraha'u. How are you? Hagama Tapalat. I am good, thank you. Kimraha'uhain. How are you yourself? Matinva. Good morning. Feskerma. Good afternoon or good evening. Oihyava. Good night. Tapalev or Tapalat. Thank you. Shadoveha. You're welcome.
Yeravata na horo
Celtic history brings you the tales of the land, castles, warriors, heroes, legends, and customs that have created the rich, vibrant, and sometimes strange and wonderful history of the Celtic world.
Wulf the Quarrelsome. Now Wulf the Quarrelsome fought and defeated Broder, which he cut open Broder's belly and then led him around and around the trunk of a large tree, so that his entrails would wind around the tree and be pulled out of him. Now Broder did not die as they were drawn out of him, and Wulf gave him a knife and the options of dying now by suicide, soon by just waiting to bleed out, or to cut his entrails out, which tied him to the tree and continue to fight like a man. It's not recorded which choice Broder made. Now Wulf the Quarrelsome was an 11th century Irish warrior who was known at the time as the biggest and most badass dude on the known planet. Brother of the legendary Irish High King Brian Boru, Wulf's mother was killed by a Viking raiding party while he was still young, allowing him to cultivate an unending hatred for everything Viking related. While Wulf honed his ability to crack people's heads open with a gigantic freaking axe and then turn their skulls into decorative wine goblets, Brian made a name for himself by uniting all the Irish peoples under one banner and standing up to the combined forces of the Viking invaders across the island. See, back in the day, Ireland was divided out into a bunch of little crappy kingdoms, pointless little city-states, and other such garbage, so Brian Boru put together a kick-ass army, kicked the bejesus out of his rival warlords, and unified the country. Now, breaking the political hold the Viking nations had over some of the Irish counties in the process, well, apparently not everyone in Ireland realized how totally sweet it was to be ruled by a high king. So Brian Boru. So these jerks from the province of Leicester decided to revolt. Now, in order to help them kick Irish ass, they called in their BFFs, a horde of bloodthirsty Viking pillagers, a mix of Vikings, Scotsmen, Irish, and other assorted Celtic and Gaelic warriors, met at the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, and immediately proceeded to start beating the crap out of each other with swords, hammers, axes, fists, rocks, shields, cats, whatever the hell else they could manage to bring along with them. It was at this point in history that Wulf the Quarrelsome proved himself to be the most hardcore badass in any arena filled with hardcore badasses. Now, in case you can't close your eyes and inherently picture what this guy named Wulf the Quarrelsome would look like, we can learn a little more about Wulf by the description the Viking skalds gave him in the epic Njál's saga. They refer to him as the greatest champion and warrior of Brian Boru's army. Now, Brian Boru's forces were comprised of hardcore badass Scotch, Irish, Celtic warriors, Vikings, ninja pirates, and a few zombies. For this guy to be singled out by his enemies as the biggest badass of this insane army, you would have to imagine that he's even more hardcore than even the biggest, meanest axe-swinging, Guinness-chugging, shillelagh-busting hooligan you've ever seen. Now, another thing that totally rocks about Wulf the Quarrelsome is that he only appears in history twice, and both times he's kicking ass. It's those folks that are shrouded in mystery who are often the most interesting. That's how it is with Wulf. We never learn about his policy-making efforts. We don't know crap about his childhood, his girlfriend, his favorite color, or what he liked to do in his spare time. When you read a history of his life, you only learn one thing. He kicked ass. That's it. Now, Wulf first shows up in history right at the beginning of the Battle of Clontarf. The main thrust of the Viking offensive was personally led by a hardcore dude named Broder of Man, a legendary hero renowned for his strength and his badassitude. Now, Broder was one of those helmets with horns on it bastards with a giant freaking long axe who started whipping Irish ass all over the place, now driving Brian Boru's men back, when all of a sudden Wulf the Quarrelsome sought him out on the battlefield and engaged him in one-on-one combat. Broder of Man took one shot at Wulf. Wulf sidestepped him and bashed him in the face with his axe. knocking him to the ground. Now Broder tried to scramble to his feet, but Wolf kicked him in the chest, knocking him back to the ground. Broder got up a third time, brought up his shield, and Wolf smacked him with a mighty axe blow that sent him tumbling down the side of a hill. When Broder got to his feet for the fourth time, the big bad Viking warlord, he decided he'd had enough of getting his ass kicked, and he was obviously up against a superior warrior and went running away like a little bitch. Now, as Broder ran towards safety, with Broder of Man no longer leading the Viking army, Wolf the Quarrelsome almost single-handedly cut a swath of destruction through the enemy ranks, severing limbs and adding a nice glossy crimson sheen on his axe blade, as Brian Boru's Irish forces began to rout the Leicester forces. Now, by the end of the day, 6,000 Viking warriors had been slain, and the political power the Viking kings held over Ireland was forever broken. However, it wasn't all unicorn rainbows and giant piles of severed Viking heads for the Celtic warriors at Clontarf. You see, as Broder of Man and his entourage of elite Viking warriors were bravely running away from the serious ass-kicking that they were getting by Wolf, they, by sheer stroke of luck, they came across the tent of Brian Boru. Now, Brian Boru was a pretty badass dude back in the day, but at the time of the Battle of Clontarf, he was like 80 years old. Now, the Vikings busted out into his tent, caught him in the middle of his prayers, and chopped his head off. Then they ran away into the woods yelling about how awesome they were. Yeah, right. About an hour later, Wolf of Quarrelsome returned to report victory and found the decapitated corpse of his older brother. Now, this, of course, sent him into a frickin' insane rage, and he swore vengeance on the man who had killed his brother and his king. He immediately put together a force of tough-as-shit Celtic warriors and set out to mess Broder up, because, as you can probably guess, medieval badasses with names like Wolf the Quarrelsome don't screw around for 1 second when it comes to vengeance. Now, he and his men hunted the Viking raiders down and engaged them in the most brutal hand-to-hand combat known at the time. Now, all of Broder's men were slain, of course, and Wolf took down Broder himself. Then he cut open Broder's stomach with a large axe and pulled out his entrails, and, well, you know the rest of the gory story. Perhaps I'm over-glorifying a guy who really has very little place in history, but in my opinion, Wolf the Quarrelsome is totally underrated badass. He shows up, beats the crap out of a hardcore Viking army, bests their hero in single combat on 2 separate occasions, lives for revenge, and is tough enough to merit special mention from incredibly hardcore Icelandic warrior poets as being the greatest warrior and champion on the field of battle. As far as I'm concerned, that's pretty badass.
children by, cool feverish blood and throbbing brow. 1 hour with thee.
Everyday Celtic Ways brings you the mythology, traditions, and customs that have created a unique and personal culture that still affects those that are Celtic and those that just love the Celtic world.
Stoor worm, Orkney's dragon. Now, Vikings, they played a huge role in the medieval history of the British Isles. Most likely you know that they raided churches and settlements, but they also colonized parts of Scotland such as Shetland, Orkney, and parts of Caithness. The Norse brought with them skalds and bards who told heroic sagas and tales of dragons and of stoorworms. You may never have heard of the stoorworm. However, it seems likely that stoorworm made its way into Scottish folk tales via Viking lore. Now, Scotland is an island country, so Scottish dragons are often not winged beasts, but usually watery monsters. The most famous is the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie as she is fondly called. In ancient times, people thought Scotland was located at the end of the world. It is any wonder that on old maps the unknown was filled with strange creatures and the words, "Here be dragons." Now in time, Orkney, the islands to the north of Scottish mainland, created their own dragon, the evil Mester Stoorworm. And it seems the Orcadians got some help from their neighbor, the Vikings. Now Orkney did not always belong to Scotland. The early inhabitants of Orkney were Picts. At that time, the nation of Scotland did not exist. Then, with the rise of the Vikings in the 8th century, the Orkney Islands became an enclave of Norway. The Orkney Islands became an enclave of Norway. The Norsemen brought with them sea monsters carved into the prows of their ships, and their skulls told tales of dragons and their sagas. The origins of the name Stoorworm would come from Old Norse word Storderglander. This is another name for Jormungandr, a serpent from Norse mythology, fathered by Loki. Now, yet Stoor is also a Scots word meaning dust or to pour or flood. The word worm comes from the Old English worm with a Y, meaning dragon or serpent. However, the tale of Mester Stoorworm reads like something straight out of a Viking saga. Now, the Mester Stoorworm was the master of all stoorworms. So large it is said that it could wrap itself around the whole world. Nobody could say with any surety where the stoorworm came from, but if the rumors were true, this monstrous sea creature was the creation of a malevolent spirit. Soon he began a reign of terror. He began one of the 9 plagues to curse the world. The creature was so big it could crush castles with its long forked tongue and sweep entire cities into its maw. ships crackled like eggshells before its monstrosity. Its putrid breath was poison to every living thing, and its head was as large as a mountain, and its eyes were the size of dark locks. Wherever the Stoor worm's head came to rest, it would demand that the neighboring people feed it. In time, the creature developed a taste for a rare delicacy. On the 7th day of the week at sunrise, the Stoor worm would awaken and yawn 9 times. He would then demand a meal of 7 virgins. Soon the people became tired of losing their daughters to the giant dragon. In desperation, the people sought the advice of an old wizard. His solution was simple: feed the king's daughter to the Stoor worm. The serpent would leave and trouble them no more. Alas, the poor king was so distraught when he heard this, for the princess was his only daughter, the apple of his eye. The grief-stricken king pleaded for another solution, but alas, there was none. In return, he received a 10-week reprieve. With a heavy heart, the king sent couriers across the land, seeking a hero capable of slaying the dragon. As an incentive, the king also was offering a great reward. The successful warrior would receive the kingdom. Also, he would win the mighty sword, Sickersnapper, inherited from Odin himself. Wow. The reward attracted many valiant warriors. Alas, though, most fled on encountering the beast. Only 12 had the courage to stay and face the monster. But things did not go favorably for the brave men, with the beast slaying them all. The last week arrived, and it seemed all was lost. But on the last day, an unlikely hero arrived. His name was Asapatl, which means the Cinder Lad. He was the 7th son of a 7th son and a bit of a dreamer. He lived with his family on a farm, but while his father and brothers worked hard, Asapatl was content to sit at the hearth, where he would make up poems and stories and get covered in thick peat ash because he was in La La Land, dreaming away of better life. Much to his brother's chagrin, he used to use his imagination, his vivid imagination, to make up tales where he was the hero. Now his siblings laughed at him, berated him for being lazy and useless. Upon hearing the knight's plight, Asapatl slipped away from the farm. He escaped to his little boat, armed only with a bucket containing a smoldering peat from his hearth. In the darkness he sneaked up on the sleeping beast, but this was the 7th day of the week, and with the sunrise the Stoor worm began to yawn. Each yawn sucked a vast tide of water into the dragon's mouth. Once Asapatl was close enough, one of the mighty yawns drew the poor boy and his little vessel into the creature's cavernous mouth. Soon he was whirling down the beast's throat, carried by a torrent of seawater. Then the boat grounded abruptly. Picking up the bucket, Asapatl ran for his life. Asapatl turned a corner and found the dragon's liver. Pulling out a knife, Asapatl gouged a hole in it. Then he stuffed the smoldering peat into the wound. Soon the liver began to burn. Asapatl ran back to his boat. There was not a minute to lose, for the worm retched and spewed out the intrepid boy along with his boat, making it back to shore. The boy watched as the dragon began to burn. Black smoke billowed from the monster's nostrils. In agony, its forked tongue shot out and grabbed hold of one of the horns of the moon. In its weakened state, its tongue slipped and crashed, causing a deep rift in the earth. As the beast writhed in agony, teeth dropped from its vile, foaming mouth. The first lot of falling teeth formed the Orkney Islands. As the falling teeth rained down, the Shetland Isles and the Faroe Isles. Then, in its dying moments, the Stoor worm curled up tightly and became the country we now know as Iceland. Asapatl was married to the princess, and the folk rejoiced, for the Stoor worm was finally dead. Oh, wow. What an awesome story. I wonder if it has any base in truth. A lot of these myths do, you know.
Top 11 Heritage. Now remember to check out my YouTube channel. It's got Celtic music, podcasts, Gaelic language, Gaelic song, Celtic history videos, plus lots more. And my Facebook group where you can give me your inputs and insights on all things Celtic. But before I let you go, the trivia question answer. Martian leaving Dresden. Bye for now. But I'm going to let you go with a song.
Goodbye, Bobby.
O mochis jam fed ban Mian magachok fen O mochis jam fed ban Mochiat lam smogdag Shanach du ed moldav Famo leon se Struag nach romi madva Kvial suntoch Struag nach romi madva Monta jont mim verpan Schapinjen trast Kian al torshach Spoch nach romi jagul Tjauner dit goalein Spoch nach romi jagul Nische schuld dit hud Down en clouden en rug Tövnem fodan Strichen chia dit mohud Kaimat hami Strichen chia dit mohud Smiri planen kul Lana hok midut kund Oi kedalvein Bouncelum sabitav Lemochiat grav Bouncelum sabitav Et tøvnum bjaunarst Gønt veratagen skall Achne speden Kieten stag of I bron Auns na kuntjen Kieten stag of I bron Od get hele små jord Och kan ut mi vid tråd Oi kerumni Mile marashkeda nor Kov mal vaivdish Mile marashkeda nor Skarsha regne mol leon Sed ga kumpiken tror Små de granja Homo hischam fedban Mian gachog O mo hischam fed ban, mo hiet lernen små grach, shenach du el mo ban.